My today's Masterclass is Pamela and Barba. She is a professional strategist and coach, and brings 7 years of strategy, arts, medical, and practical. Her main advice on personal branding and mindset to meet application on boards and on teams across the country. Next time, we'll bring Mia. Okay, we're gonna have to go to text now. Chat. Let's chat in the box. Let's text. Let's see if this will work.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Aura Ordóñez. I use she, ella pronouns, and I am the Latina Engagement Fellow for Walker's Legacy. Welcome to our Latina Masterclass series. Named in honor of Madam T.J. Walker, Walker's Legacy was created with a mission to cultivate an ecosystem of assets designated to inspire, equip, and engage a global network of professional and entrepreneurial women of color. You can learn more about Walker's Legacy by joining us online at www.walkerslegacy.com. So without further ado, Walker's Legacy is proud to present Latina Masterclass, which is our latest digital masterclass series featuring women of influence who have achieved success in business and beyond. Every month, we set up a masterclass where we host a Latin person of influence who has achieved success in their respective field. These masterclasses will aim to offer exclusive insight on how Latinx people are cementing their legacy and paving the way for inclusivity in different industries. Thank you for joining us for today's masterclass, Ms. Pamela Barba. She is a brand strategist and coach and is exactly as her website describes, equal parts magical and practical. Her grounded advice and personal branding and mindset techniques have been featured on Forbes and on stages across the country. As founder of Brilliant Brand Club, Pamela helps entrepreneurs who are also in the tricky beginning of learning how to start a brand. She helps emprendedores cultivate and market their brand identity while also using all the elements that are true to them. Having a clear picture of their goals and a strategic plan is pivotal to the success of any business, and Pamela has helped many do just that. Pamela helps you uncover your gifts and be known for the right things. I'm delighted to welcome you again, Pamela. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, it's great to have you. I guess I can go ahead and get started with the first question. It's not every day that we just wake up and decide I'm going to be an emprendedora. Or you can, the story looks different for everybody. But I wanted to ask you personally if you could tell me more about how you got started and what's your background. What was your shifting point into getting started as an emprendedora?
Sure. Thank you so much, and thanks to Walker's Legacy for having me. It's an honor to be here. For me, really, I always thought I would start a business. I grew up in a small business family. I come from one of those weird families where everybody's an entrepreneur. Both sides of my family, most aunts and uncles, all of my siblings. It's just kind of what people do. I know that sometimes people have the opposite. All of their people are 9-to-5 people, and they're the first entrepreneur. So I always thought I would start a business, but I thought it was going to be in 10 years or something. But really what led me to start was after the 2016 election, I just felt really discontent with my job. I felt like I needed to be doing something that mattered more. And at the same time, I was really struggling as a first generation person in the workplace, usually as one of the only Latinas. And I kind of just reached a point of burnout when I was 27. And so I stopped, I quit. I had no backup plan. But I did have a graphic design degree. So I was like, I guess I can start a business. And that's kind of how I got started.
That's amazing. And I feel like it resonates a lot with other people's story of wanting to start their own business at some point. I wanted to ask you as well, why do you think it's important for Latinx people to be able to share their story when it comes to starting their business? How does that tailor into their business later on? And, maybe if you could tell me how that has looked like for you.
Yeah, well, in general, I think it's really important for somebody that's starting a business, a startup, even a podcast or a nonprofit, it doesn't matter what it is. If you feel called to start something because you had an experience, because you lacked something, or because you simply went through something that you don't want somebody else to go through, your story is the first piece that attracts other people. So your story could be the thing that attracts a co-founder, or that it attracts a board for your nonprofit. Or it could be the first thing that attracts your clients. People get interested in people, and when they hear your story, it gives them an opportunity to connect, which is the hardest thing to do on the internet. On the internet, all that we're trying to do, especially with marketing, is to get strangers to trust us. And it's really hard to get people to trust you when you're hiding behind a logo. And that happens a lot because people have this idea that they have to appear professional. And a lot of the times, appearing professional means changing the way that you talk, changing the way that you show up, only showing up professionally.
Code switching.
Absolutely. And code switching, not talking like yourself, maybe maybe there are parts of your story or your identity that, I don't know, my parents don't love that I talk about being an immigrant or about how I was previously undocumented. but those are parts of who I am, and those are parts that attract the right people to me, whether it's in any capacity. So I think it's important for anybody, but I think it's especially important for people that come from different backgrounds to help you stand out and help you connect with other people. And for me, sharing my story has been a magical piece of really building a community of people that support me for me.
Absolutely. I think that's the foundation towards anything, you having the ability to be yourself. That's just like the building block. So I wanted to ask you, what does being a brand strategist mean to you? You've given advice and you've spoken across stages all over the country, and maybe that could be just like a big umbrella for other things, but I wanted to see what you have to say in regards to that.
To me, being a brand strategist, really my focus is on helping people find the right way for them of doing something. There is no lack of advice or e-courses or masterclasses or whatever on the internet. And it's really overwhelming, especially if you're an entrepreneur. It's so overwhelming to keep up with Pinterest and TikTok and Clubhouse. And so my focus is on helping people identify what about them is magical. Like, what about them is unique? What about them makes them be like the person that should be doing that thing that they're doing? And two, how to show, like, create that persona, tell that story on the internet without the overwhelm. So I'm really focused on practical strategies. I'm really focused on telling people to do less, and really doubling down on the things that actually work for them and their audience, which is really specific to, like, there's not one size fits all. It really depends on who your audience is and what your goals are.
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. I think this advice could be so necessary for so many, especially like young millennial women that are starting their businesses, and they really feel like, they need to tailor it to a certain Instagram audience or Facebook or LinkedIn. I just wish that they had access to hear this, and I hope they do.
It's really exhausting. And I mean, I get it, because I have been on that side of things too, where I'm trying to do everything. And it is, it's kind of like wearing an uncomfortable outfit for like a year.
Absolutely. Right. Which brings me to now, we're going through something that looks like a physical plague almost. Right. So I think 2020 brought on huge changes, regardless of who you are. It might look different for everybody, but I wanted to ask you, what are your insights on how to navigate digital marketing and brand building, specifically now in this new normal? If you have any advice for emprendedores that kind of have their foot at the door.
Yeah, my advice is that it's all about relationships. It's all about being able to truly create connections with people, however that looks for you and however that looks for your industry. So whether it is hanging out in Facebook groups, or maybe they're like, I feel like sometimes we have the communities there and they're like wanting to listen and talk to us, but we're like, but wait, it's not on TikTok or whatever. And it's like, meanwhile, you have like a WhatsApp group filled with people, and it's like, no, your people are there. So I would say really focusing, one, on creating relationships with people, having conversations, however that looks right now. And then two, focusing on self-care. I mean, if you have a brand and you're having to show up on social media, because that's part of how you bring business, it's really, really important to have systems in place so you can take breaks, especially when the news get really heavy.
Right. Taking that time to decompress and, not overwhelm yourself, I think is so important and so undermined now. I feel like we're just meant to be these sources of creativity consistently, and we don't have that time to rest. So, okay, I would also love your insight on what it means to you to be a successful emprendedora. Success can look different for everybody, but if you had a definition for it, what would that be?
Yes, I think success is getting to choose what success is for you. I think it means not living a definition of your life, or a business owner that is maybe what your parents wanted or what your culture wants or what, a new country wants you to do. But really, being able to choose, like being able to slow down enough to be like, here's what I think and here's what I've been taught to think. And actually, I like this instead. I mean, even that is a huge success and a huge gift, is having that privilege of being able to slow down. It definitely is a privilege. Some people are surviving and they don't get to think about what they want. So I think success is getting to choose what you want. For me, success looks like not working all the time. It looks like actually getting to enjoy my life, whether I'm making 10K or 100K. Because I think at the end of the day, like the whole idea of just hustling your butt off to make this huge business is, to me, it's a waste if all I'm doing is working and if that's all that I care about.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you. Okay, so I think my next question would be, for Latinx people that are going through this digital renaissance right now, where we are forced to kind of publicize ourselves and talk about our businesses, and this digital renaissance that wasn't maybe as prominent a couple years ago, why do you think it's important that they demonstrate their brand loyalty through social media engagement, regardless of their industry?
So I think this question throws me off a little bit. So they're demonstrating their brand loyalty to their fans,
right? Through social media engagement. Is there a certain importance towards that, or should they be focusing on other aspects of social media? Maybe it's a broad question. I don't know. I just wanted to pick your brain a bit.
Yeah, I think it's really important that the people, so if it's people that are following us, I think it's really important that we listen and that we create dialogue with people where they're at. I think sometimes people want to talk about what they want to talk about, and they don't realize that their audience may not be there yet. Like maybe and I talk about this all the time. This happens a lot, especially with like academics or people who are like super experts in their field, is that your knowledge level is like a 10, but most of your audience is at like a 5. So when you talk at a level 10, they're just like, you're losing them completely. So it really comes to understanding who are the people that are following us, that are interacting with your brand, and what do they need to see from you? What do they find valuable, entertaining, informative?
Absolutely. So besides building, when it comes to building that traction, have you seen, with your clients and the people that you've worked with, just a common denominator that has really allowed them to engage with their audiences and really build that traction more and more, regardless whether they're user researchers or they're starting a business, with hair care products, whatever that looks like? I was wondering if you saw something that stood out to you.
Yes. Consistency is really important, which can be hard. There's a lot of things going on. And what I find also is that sometimes when people are promoting something, we really let our self-worth kind of get tangled in it sometimes. And so we're like, I posted about it 3 times and like nothing happened. And it's like, well, you got to post about it like 20 times before something happens. So consistency is really important. Being really specific about who your audience is, that when you really know your audience, that's when you can write the kind of content that makes them stop and think that you're talking about them. When you can make 20 people stop and think that you wrote this post about them personally because you have that depth of an understanding of your audience, that's when you're doing something right. And then also finding a way to have fun with it. I have clients that hate writing, and I'm like, don't start a blog. Like, whatever you do, maybe start a podcast. And then I have clients who get really anxious when it comes to finding images to put with their writing. And I'm like, well, then maybe do LinkedIn or Facebook, where the image that you attach to it doesn't matter that much. So I think it really comes to people finding in what ways do they feel creative, and how can they use that method for creating content, being consistent, and then making sure that you have the right strategy in place too, right? Like, for example, Instagram is not it's not a platform where it's easy to grow. So if you're devoting all your time and all your energy to Instagram and you're not doing any visibility, PR, influencer marketing, posting on places like Pinterest, YouTube, places where there's SEO, you might not see any growth. You might be always talking to the same 200 followers. And so it's really important that you understand like what platforms give me visibility, what platforms help me convert people, what platforms help me nurture people, and that you simplify that so that it's doable.
I completely agree with you, which I guess was going to bring me to my next question too. Do you feel like it's definitely important? Let me see if I could word this right. Do you feel like you have to tailor what medium you use for your business, or do you feel like generically, due to the conditions we're in, perhaps like Instagram could work really well for everybody, or LinkedIn, regardless if you're a user research or you're starting another business? Do you feel like there is a social media outlet that works best right now, or?
No, I think what I've discovered with my clients is that there's generally two kinds of people. One type of person is more sales driven, meaning they're more comfortable with the one-on-one conversations. They're more comfortable reaching like out to person by person. So whether that's like starting conversations inside Facebook groups or LinkedIn and then going to a phone call from that point. And then there's people that are more marketing driven, which means they're more like they're happier creating content. They're happier trying to talk to 20 people at once. And so I would say neither is good or bad. Just identify which one you are. If you're more comfortable one-on-one, figure out how you could even do it through email. How can you email all your contacts and say, I started this business. Can you introduce me to people that might be looking for this specific thing? And if you're more of a content person, create a content calendar. So I don't think there's one answer to anything. I think the only answer is how can you simplify and how can you do something that in some way feels energizing to you?
Absolutely. Okay, so this is my last question, I think. Is there anything that you do specifically when you are overwhelmed or overloaded by all the catastrophe that's going on in the world and you have to publish on your social media, because it's part of your business? I feel like this is a question a lot of like my friends have too when they are tailoring their products on things like Instagram and Facebook. Do you feel like there's definitely some space to speak about what's going on in the world, or should you just keep your social media for your business? What do you think about that?
Like for your politics?
It could be for politics. It could be, for what's going on with COVID, just in general, world news. Yeah.
Yeah. I think those are kind of two different questions. Like on one hand, if the question is, do I think people should speak their mind on their social media, talk about politics, social justice, things that might be controversial? My answer is absolutely. I believe that big brands are doing this, and I believe we're humans and people want to support human brands. And I know there's a scarcity mentality that tells you like, well, what if you lose out on the people that don't have your same values? My personal belief, I'm like, good, that's probably better than, because we might have not been a good fit anyway. So when it comes to using your voice and your opinion, absolutely. On the other hand, the other question within that is like, should you post when stuff is happening? Do you feel like you have to post? What if you have to keep selling? I think there are times, especially as we saw in 2020, where I don't feel good posting. I'm like, this is not a good time to talk about myself. This is not a good time to talk about my business. And so I think that, and I understand people need to sell, but I think we have to create a more flexible content calendar to know, hey, if stuff blows up this month, I have to account for maybe I won't be able to promote the service. Maybe I'm going to email my list, which is smaller than social media, and have a smaller conversation there. So I do think we have to have contingency plans as the world keeps getting crazier and crazier to because sometimes people don't need to know about your service. Sometimes you really don't need to say anything at all. And then sometimes you have to take a stand and say, this is what I believe, or this is what we believe.
I completely agree with you. Okay. Before I get to my closing remarks, do you feel like there has been something that's worked for you specifically that has allowed you to keep that consistency with a certain amount of clients, whether that be hashtags or a specific, asset or skill that you found that resonates with you, that you would advise to others?
Yeah, I mean, for me, something that has worked a lot is being in different entrepreneurial communities, because I do work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I find that most of my clients from 2020 are people who I was in a network or a community with before. And I wasn't trying to sell to them. They just, got to see how I talked about myself or how I thought about branding, and then chose to hire me. So I think there's a lot of power in those communities, not just because of what you can learn, but because of the people that you can meet. And then the other thing for me has been to be strategic about high visibility events. So speaking at conferences, teaming up with, for example, General Assembly or with y'all to talk, and where I get to meet a lot of people at once and they get to see what I'm about. Those are two things that have worked for me that keep people coming. It helps me reach more people.
Absolutely. Well, Pamela, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story with Walker's Legacy and the community. How can people stay in touch with you?
Yes, my hashtag username is Miss Pamela Barba, so you can find me on Clubhouse. Instagram is mostly the two platforms where I'm at. That's also my website. And yeah, definitely DM me, reach out if you have any questions. I love to meet new people.
Absolutely. I'm sure Walker's Legacy will be glad as well to do future collaborations with you, hopefully, and definitely keeping in touch. So Walker's Legacy programming looks to bring you insightful, meaningful opportunities for conversation and community. And we hope that you found today's talk a special hangout opportunity. We hope to see you at our upcoming events on February 25th. Our Latina engagement series will feature Latinas in literature and publishing, and you can visit and learn more at walkerslegacy.com. And stay up to date with upcoming programs. Pamela, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.